Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. First of all, you guys, thank you so much for all the support that you've been giving me. I am beyond grateful. And for today's video, let's just get into it because I think it's gonna be a long one. For today's video, we are going to talk about this one reading challenge that I have been part of since the beginning of the year. And it's called Reading Around the World or Literary World Tour, many names with same meaning. And what it basically means is that you have to read at least one book from each and every country in the world. Out of the 195 countries, I have finished reading from 16 countries so far after I started doing this reading challenge in this year. So we're going to be talking about a few of those today. I'll start with our own beautiful country, and from India, of course, I have read multiple books, but for this challenge specifically, I picked the book called God of Small Things. Basically, to talk about the plot, we follow Ammu, who is a very free-spirited, fun girl who's born in a high-class traditional family. Her father is a respected entomologist and a classical violin player. According to Ammu, her family was quite supportive and quite encouraging of her dreams and aspirations. She wanted to be a very independent woman. She had big dreams and she wanted to do a lot of things in her life, and her family to an extent supported her, but still they had expectations from her to follow the traditional path of arranged marriage and marry somebody in their social class, basically somebody from their own caste. But as I said, Ammu was a very free-spirited, independent girl who would want to question everything that is told to her and would want to, be a rebel. And she falls in love with a Bengali man and ends up marrying him, going against her family's wishes. But unfortunately, this guy turns out to be an alcoholic and their marriage is not working anymore, so she decides to part ways with him. But meanwhile, she's also blessed with twins, a boy and a girl called Rahel and Esther. After the divorce, Ammu decides to move back into their family estate with her kids. Meanwhile, her kids are very well brought up and all of those, but still she lives a life of an outcast. This book talks about very important topics like love, caste systems and class conflicts and tragedy and gender oppression and a lot of important things like that, and that is part of the reason why it is widely celebrated and appreciated. Also, to talk about the writing, Arundhati Roy has a beautiful way of writing, and the whole of the book I think is filled with beautiful prose and it's beautifully written. And I sometimes went back and read few lines and paragraphs again to experience that once more, annotated or even took pictures and shared with people because they're so beautifully written. And sometimes you would think that some lines just stick with you forever and you're like, oh my god, if the whole book was written like this, I would totally love it. But guess what, actually I think you wouldn't, because when I was reading this, though it was so beautifully written and the prose are so beautiful and everything is so amazing, sometimes you just need some mundane paragraphs, that mundane world building and a lot of simple paragraphs that will make you connect with the world better. And I thought that was missing here, and everything was too pretentious, too beautiful to even feel like real. So I think sometimes I was lost when I was trying to find what actually the plot is revolving around, because we're trying to talk about Ammu and then we go back and talk about the kids and then we go and describe a garden, how beautiful that is. While it is very beautiful to read and all of those things, like if the language is exceptional, but where's the point going to? Sometimes I felt like it was too overwhelming for me. By no means I'm trying to criticize the book or what it talks about, because it's a beautiful book and I know that the things that are being spoken about are put out very, very beautifully. But I just felt personally that it was not for me, because even though the book was fast paced, I felt like I was not able to read it easily. So I'm just trying to say that this was not an easy read for me. So for that, I think I would give this book 4 stars. Now, after discussing about this beautiful book, I am just contemplating if I want to keep the vibes going as it is, or I want to like do a little switcheroo. But because I have read a few books that are very, very similar to this, and that speaks about important aspects in life, and things like this, where gender oppression and social constructs and things like that, it's very, very interesting. It's very beautiful to read about books like this, and I think we'll keep it for another day. For today, let us move to the next country that is one of my favorite countries to read from, which is Japan. I think my top countries that I've read most of the number of books from are UK, India, US, Japan and Germany. So I think it's one of the countries that gives me my kind of books. I don't know, I just really can't explain it, but it's my thing, it's my type. So the book that I picked for this challenge was Days at the Murasaki bookstore. So I think it's a very, very beautifully written book. Now again, I don't know if I am really a very pessimistic person or I am too critical, I don't know, but I would just say read this book for the vibes. Because if I have to talk about the plot, as I said, I don't care a lot about the people in this book, because all I care about is the bookshops and the town itself, because the whole town is full of bookstores and coffee shops and cafes, and that's my ideal place. Like, I would want to move in here. All that I care about is the vibes, because how she works at the coffee shop. Because when I picked up this challenge of reading around the world, my whole goal was to see how different lives of people from different places are, because how simple things are, how they talk if they go on a date, how they read books, what kind of books do they read, what do they like about, if they like a book or do not like a book. All these kind of simple things of how a person from a different country just lives their life. I think that's what I wanted to experience when I was reading around the world, when I decided to do that. And I think I picked the perfect book for that. In the first half, I think we are just getting introduced to the town, to the bookshop, to how she hated reading and then fell in love with it, story of my life, and all of these things. And in the second half, there are things that we don't really care about, so I won't be talking about it. So I think just for the vibes and for simple things and simple lives of people in a different country, in a different small town, I think that's what I really loved about this book, and for that I would give it 3.5 stars. Now let's quickly move on to the next book, next country, which is Scotland. And for that I chose a book called To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. Well, I don't know what I was expecting before getting into this book, but I really this is a kind of a book that you would think about later. Like, when you're reading it, you're just reading it and you're like, okay, this is going on, this is the plot, and this is like this after this and this. But after you finish reading it, after a few days, I think in before going to bed, in showers, this is what the kind of books that you're thinking about. And after reading this, like, there's so much aftertaste of this book, and that is something that's very rare. That this book just captures emotions so well and talks about small details that wouldn't give you commentary about it, like very small things. Let me tell you a little bit about the plot, and then you will know what I'm talking about. Basically, there are 2 distinct sections in this book, both involving a trip to the lighthouse. In the first section, we see Mrs. Ramsay telling one of their kids that they can go to the lighthouse the next day, but Mr. Ramsay openly disagrees with her, saying that the weather is not going to allow them to go to the lighthouse, and just small disagreements like that keep on happening. And 10 years pass by. In those 10 years, the First World War starts and ends. We see that Mrs. Ramsay has died, few of their kids have died, two basically of their kids have died, a lot of family members have died. So at the end of 10 years, we go back to the summer house along with the remaining kids that are alive and a few family members. And Mr. Ramsay tries to go to the lighthouse again. And he wants to take the remaining kids to that lighthouse. But this time the kids are not really interested to go to the lighthouse, and he still keeps insisting. We also see about how the relationship between the kids and the father is not very healthy, because he always had a fear of how people will see him in future, how his work will be viewed in future and things like that. But his own family does not have any affection towards him, and that is one of the things that are mainly underlined. How by taking them back to the lighthouse, he's trying to fix the things that cannot be undone. As I said, I think a lot of things in this book are felt rather than just read, because they're not written, they're just, the scenario is given to you, the situation is given to you, and without any kind of comment, which makes you the deciding factor of how you want to take it. And that is why I think it is different for everyone that reads it, and that is, I think, why it leaves you with an aftertaste, because you keep thinking what are the different ways you can perceive a certain scenario. Again, it's not an open-ended book where you are, left to figure it out yourself, but at the same time, they're all over the book. The writing is such that there is no commentary that this is a good thing or a bad thing. It's just written, like it's just talking about what is happening, and it's up to you to think about what is, how to read between the lines. It's up to you. Now, I think because of the kind of writing and the kind of plot, I really liked it, and I really, when I first read it, I think I gave it 3 stars, but because of how it made me feel and how it made me think and how it has changed the way I see things and how I want to fix a lot of things on relationships and focus more on now than, in the future, like Mr. Ramsay, I think that has impacted a lot of how I would live my life. And for that, I think I would give it a 4.5 stars. The next book that we are going to talk about is based in Austria-Hungary, which is now in Czech Republic, and the book is called The Metamorphosis. Basically, the plot of this book is so intriguing because one random day, Grigory Samsa wakes up and figures out that he has transformed into a huge beetle. Now, in the beginning, when he's trying to figure that out and he's trying to, figure out what is he going to do, if he's going to turn back, how would he do that, a lot of things like that. When I first thought about it, read about it, I thought it was more of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids vibes, but it's literally not. There's a lot of absurdist humor, I think, where he's trying to figure out and ask questions like, oh my god, how am I gonna go to work now? So is that what your first thought is when you turn into a bug? The whole analogy of how a specific illness can impact a person or their family. I think that is a very interesting take. Gregory was the family's main breadwinner, and he was a very, very hardworking man who would put his family's needs and responsibilities before his own. And I think he was a very selfless man, and he was very, very innocent, but his family, I think, on the other hand, was very selfish and tried to exploit him as much as they could. I also think many times this book is introduced as a book to students, because it's not a huge book and maybe they can go through this very quickly and also maybe find amusement in the beginning where he has turned into a bug and how he figures that out. Maybe that is a little amusing, and humor of course is present, so maybe that is the reason that it is introduced to the students and children. But I think it hits the most when you are a part of working class, when when you grow up a little and you see your father doing that, you see you are doing that, and when you are part of that, I think that's when it hits you the most. So I don't think it should be given as a children's book. I think I also recommended this to a kid, and I got the same response that what the hell is this book. Now I think they should read it back in like 10 years, and maybe then it'll make more sense to them. Again, I would give this book a 3.5 stars, and I think it's a very well written and very intellectual book. And at the same time, it's also very sad. It's also very, it's the harsh reality of the world, which I did not want to hear. So I think that pissed me a little bit, and that's why I would give this a little less stars. Moving on to the next. The last book that we're going to talk about today is from the country Sweden, and the book that I picked up for it is A Man Called Ove. Well, this book, basically, I went in with a lot of expectations because I had heard a lot about it, and everybody kept telling me that this is a very good book and so beautiful, I would cry and all of these things. And I came in with a very high expectation. When I started reading this book, I hated this character. I was like, what is this man? Basically, it's about this grumpy old man who thinks everybody, all the people around him are idiots, and he has to do things a certain way, and he is just so grumpy and cranky and does not want to live and all of those things. But when I started reading this, I hated him. I literally hated him, just like the rest of the neighborhood. But then he started connecting with his new neighbors a little bit, and then we go into the flashbacks about his childhood, about his love story. This relationship with his wife is everything. It's so beautiful. He was exact opposite of whatever he is right now. He was so caring, he was so present, he was so... It's the best love story that I have ever read, and it's so beautiful that and then we see how devastating it was when his wife dies, and he does not see the reason to go on with his life anymore. And it's it's just so beautiful, and how he finds purpose in his life, and how he connects back to the community, how much power a community holds on anybody's lives, and how impactful it can be if it wants to be. It's so beautiful. I think I have not read any book like this before, and I just connected with this man so much towards the end, and it did really made me cry. So I think it's very beautiful. Even I don't know if it's the best book ever, but it made me feel so many emotions. So for that, I think I would give it 5 stars. I think it made me appreciate the people around me so much. It made me think about life differently, and I think that's why we read books. Well, I just think it's a very good book, and I would totally recommend if you couldn't already tell. Now, this brings us to the end of this video. I hope that you got some good recommendations. I hope you had a good time listening to me rant about this, and I think I will see you very soon again. And until then, please subscribe to my channel, like and comment, share with people, the whole, the drill. As I said, I will see you very soon again, and if you have any recommendations or suggestions for me, or if you would like to see any kind of videos, please comment down below and I will try to make them. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and okay, bye.